Hello, and welcome to today's weekly live show. My name is Laura Green, and I am delighted to be coming to you today to talk about creative sequencing for yoga teachers. So I will leave us a second just to everyone to come here. I'm also going to be recording this, putting it to the podcast. Let me just go check that the tech is all working okay. Let me know if you're here. Let me know if you're live. Let me know how your week's been. You know, we just kicked off into May. The astrology for May is absolutely lovely. There's a nice positive energy for the month ahead. So let me know if you're feeling that already, or if you're not, let me know that so we can rally around you and show you some loving support as well. So yeah, let's get chatting in the comments. Let me know that you're here, and then we will begin today's session. And welcome to the Yoga Teacher Collaborative, whether you're joining me live today in the Facebook group or if you are listening on the podcast. Podcast is the Yoga Teacher Collaborative podcast, and it is available on Spotify. So today's session is all about sequencing. We are looking at 3 practical sequencing styles that you can turn to bring a little creativity and inspiration into your classes. So before we get going into that topic, I want to tell you there is an accompanying guide for this. So the guide explores more sequencing styles, has a little written description of the 3 styles we're exploring today, but more importantly, it has 3 lesson plans. Or 2 lesson plans. 2 lesson plans. It has this lesson plan. If you can't see, don't worry, I'm just holding up a lesson plan. This is a bilaterally symmetrical lesson plan, and it is a really lovely journey. So you have that ready for you to take into class. And also this lesson plan, again, don't worry if you can't see on the podcast, and this is a ladder flow, and the guide will then come with 3 class videos. So you can see the ladder flow, you can see a wave sequence in a live class environment, and enjoy experiencing that in the body first before maybe going to share it with your students. So make sure you get the accompanying guide. If you're on Facebook, I have already dropped a link to it in the description, but I'll just copy it into the comments now. And if you are on the podcast, I'll make sure it's in the show notes. It's actually quite easy to remember the web address to get the guide. It's just my website, www.lauragreenyoga.co.uk/blog/sequencing. And that'll take you all the way to the guide. It's going to give you 2 lesson plans, 3 free videos to really inspire and to support you taking what you learned today into action in your classes. So why explore creative sequencing? I don't know about you, I've been teaching a long time, and sometimes sequencing inspiration is just bubbling out of me. I feel really inspired. I know exactly what I want to go, and it almost feels like a candy shop, and I'm trying to select less. You know, I'm all inspired. But then there are those weeks when it's like that inspiration tap has just been turned off. I'm like, oh, do I even know any yoga poses? Do I teach the same stuff every week? Oh, I don't know what to do. And that is just a natural interplay with creativity. If you speak to anyone that is well connected to their creativity, be it a writer, be it a dancer, be it a yoga teacher, be it an artist, we all know that creativity isn't a linear, consistent stream. It is a wave of up and down and up and down and up and down. And some of it is about trusting that ebb and flow. Some of it is I know when my inspiration is a little lacking, that actually it's a little bit of a red flag, that maybe I'm not taking care of myself, that maybe my nervous system is feeling a little bit full and I need to go and turn to some of my other practices to regulate my nervous system, to make spaciousness in my life, maybe go for a walk, maybe see a friend, go and get some external stimulus. So it is a bit of a red flag for that. but I have tools I can turn to in the moment to help me lesson plan. And that is what I want to talk to you about today. So when I feel stuck in a rut, needing to mix things up in my lesson planning, I have 3 tools that I go to. One is music. I am a musician, so I'll go up to my yoga room, I'll put some shuffle on Spotify and just let the music inspire movement. But that doesn't always work for me. Other times I'll flip the mat or the way I orientate mats in class. So normally I have my mat landscape, and then all of my students have their mats portrait, so short end facing into me in a semicircle. And the whole class is orientated by the students facing the top of their mat portrait, the short edge. So sometimes when I'm stuck in a rut, I just flip the mats. So I have my mat still landscape, and then I get all of my students to turn their mats landscape to orientate themselves to the long edge of the mat. And then I have to plan my class really differently so it is all on the landscape rather than portrait. That's one way. And then the other way is just to completely change my sequencing style and to use a set sort of sequencing methodology to start tickling my brain cells and creating a new plan. And that's what I'm going to share with you today, 3 different sequencing methodologies. So let me know if you're live in the comments, if you are excited about learning these 3 different sequencing methodologies. The first one we're going to look at is ladder sequencing. That's actually what I was teaching this week. Then we are going to look at bilaterally symmetrical sequencing. And then we are going to look at wave sequencing. Jatinda, hello. Sarah, hello. Thank you for being live. Lauren, good morning, darling. So let me know if you already do any of those or if you're excited to learn about ladder sequencing, bilaterally symmetrical sequencing, and wave sequencing. So let's start with ladder. Actually, before we do, what I'd say is that all of these styles are really good for mixed level classes. And, you know, sorry, I've got cat fluff in my eye. All classes really are mixed level. Even if we've advertised something as a beginner's class, you still get beginners with different levels of embodiment, different levels of being able to take instruction on movement, different levels of fitness, flexibility, different needs. So there's no class that isn't mixed level. But these 3 sequencing styles particularly work well with mixed level. So at the moment, you know, in a vinyasa class that I was teaching this week, I had a couple of complete beginners. I had a few people that have been maybe with me like a couple of months. Then I had my hardcore regulars that have been with me years, and then my hardcore that have been with me 10 plus years. So the class was really mixed in terms of familiarity with yoga and also physical needs. These 3 sequencing styles are particularly adept at supporting mixed level. I have lent in the bias towards vinyasa in the sequencing approach today. You could bring this into other styles as well, but I am really thinking about vinyasa. So ladder sequencing. This is when you take a key focal pose. So the one I was working on this week was half moon, Ardha Chandrasana. This works really well with a focal pose of something like Warrior 3. Works really well with a focal pose of dancer's pose, Natarajasana, a pose where you want to spend some time warming up the body, teaching the fundamental technique of the asana and preparing for the pose. So you'll do a normal warm-up, and ideally in that warm-up, choose the things that help prepare the body for your focal pose. So in my warm-up this week, the focal pose was Ardha Chandrasana, half moon. So think, what do you need to prepare for half moon? You need to get the ankles moving, they're giving stability. You need to wake up the feet a little bit, they're supporting balance. You need to stretch out the hamstrings. It's a big old hamstring stretch, half moon pose. You need to warm up the hips. Half moon is also a hip opener. You need to turn on the core abdominal muscles a little bit because the core is stabilizing the standing balance. And you want to be able to find the open expansiveness across the chest. So I designed a warm-up that was preparing all of those body parts. And then after the warm-up, we arrived at standing, and this is when I would normally go straight into my sun salutations or a fluid flow in a vinyasa class. And it is at that point I started the ladder. So you can spend your normal amount of time warming up, be that 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Then this ladder sequence is going to take a good 20 minutes or so. And then you've got your normal kind of cool down, gentle seated poses, gentle reclining poses, and then shavasana. So now we're going to talk about this 20-minute block in the middle, which is your ladder flow. So you take a base flow sequence. So something simple like inhale, reaching the arms up, exhale, forward fold, maybe a sun salute where you're stepping back into dog, coming forwards into plank, rising up through cobra, and you just have that as your base sequence. My base sequence this week, and you'll see it in the lesson plan if you go download that, and you'll be able to go experience this class if you go download the guide as well. But my sequence was inhale, lift the arms up, folding forward, forward fold, step back into a low lunge, drawing the arms up, Anjali Asana, low lunge, then bringing the hands on the inside, straightening the back leg, lizard lunge. Then dog, plank, Chaturanga Dandasana, cobra, dog, step or hop forwards, repeat the sequence on the other side. So that was my base sequence. That was the base rungs of the ladder. You do that sequence on both sides, and then you come to repeat the sequence again, and you add another pose. So again, we did Anjali Asana, low lunge, lizard pose, and then I added fan. And then from fan pose, Skandasana, we return back to the connecting transition, dog, plank, Chaturanga Dandasana, cobra, dog, hop forwards, repeat the sequence on the other side. And then you do that again and add another rung of the ladder. You add another pose. So the next time through, we did Anjali Asana, lizard lunge, fan, and then added wide-legged forward fold, rise up, open warrior two. Then you come back into the connecting vinyasa, dog, plank, Chaturanga Dandasana, cobra, dog, hop to the top of the mat, repeat the flow on the other side. And then you repeat and add another pose. So after fan, wide-legged forward fold, warrior two, I then added Trikonasana. Repeat the connecting vinyasa, hop to the top of the mat, do the other side. Then again, I'm going to add another rung to the ladder. So it went from Anjali Asana, lizard, fan, wide-legged forward fold, warrior two, Trikonasana, side angle Parsvakonasana, repeat the connecting vinyasa, top of the mat, other side. And then we broke down, we paused there, broke down Ardha Chandrasana, half moon, then repeated that whole ladder flow once more, adding that peak last rung of the ladder, Ardha Chandrasana, before closing. Now, what you're doing in that is the first time you do the pose, so the first time we did Anjali Asana, the first time we did lizard lunge, you linger in it, and as the teacher, you're getting the opportunity to really teach the pose, teaching key alignment, teaching your students the feeling of the pose, explaining the benefits. And then when you repeat the sequence and add on, the poses that repeat are done one movement, one breath. So the second time through, Anjali Asana is just inhale, rise up, Anjali Asana, exhale, hands down, inhale, straighten the back leg, lizard lunge, exhale, turn to fan. And now that first time you add on the next pose, fan, you stay there for a while, you really teach it, you make sure your students have understood it, you explain the benefits of the pose. Then on the repetition, one movement, one breath, the new pose, you pause and focus on that. So why is this really good for mixed level is every time there's a new pose in the sequence, you're really teaching it. And then there is the repetition. And repetition is one of the best ways to learn. And it's a little quicker that time. So when you're going through the repetition, it's just one movement, one breath, which is really fun for your students that know the practice, that they're getting this enjoyment of really flowing. Like one of my students came up to the end of class this week and said, God, I absolutely love a ladder flow. Because I tell my students what's going on. I absolutely love a ladder flow. I love how it becomes really meditative and I just get into the flow. So it can seem quite long, but you're only holding one pose in the sequence, the new pose. The others are all one movement, one breath. Now, it obviously is a very active, dynamic, flowing vinyasa class, so you need to pick the right week to do this. I've been knowing I wanted to do this ladder flow with my students for about a month. It's been in the back of my head. But end of April, the energy was quite low. People were quite tired. We had that Scorpio full moon. I took really kind of deep, meditative, quiet practices. This week, the beginning of May, the energies felt really different. My students all felt really there and ready for something flowing and challenging. We were working on stamina and everybody was really up for it. So you've got to really read the room. So that is an example of a ladder flow. Remember, go download the guide on my website, lauragreenyoga.co.uk/blog/sequencing. You'll be able to go and get the exact lesson plan I did this week, and you'll be able to get the video of me teaching it live on Zoom so you can experience it yourself. And of course, that's all for free. So next we have bilaterally symmetrical. I have taught on this before, so you will find other videos of me talking about this. If you're watching the video, here's a bilaterally symmetrical, and you see I've planned it differently. So in my ladder flow, I divide my page landscape into 4. When I'm doing bilaterally symmetrical, I divide my page in half, portrait. Again, don't worry if you can't see, you can go and download those exact lesson plans. So what is bilaterally symmetrical? It is like a straight line walk. Say you start at point A, you walk into the woods, you arrive at your destination, you turn around and you walk the same path back out, as opposed to a circular walk. Now, if you've ever been on a straight linear walk like that, the walk looks different on the way out than it did on the way in because you notice different things, your perspective is different. And this is what is so powerful about a bilaterally symmetrical class, is it really gives your students the opportunity to notice what has changed in their body, mind and soul during the practice. It's great for mixed level because the first time you do every pose, you can take a more gentle variation of it and you can really teach the key alignment points. When you're returning home on the journey, you can offer different variations of the poses, or you can just let people experience more of the breath in them and be more meditative in the practice and less instructional. So what happens with a ladder flow? Let's break this down. I invariably start a ladder flow in Shavasana. So where does a yoga practice finish? In Shavasana. Ladder, it's the same journey in, it's repeated on the way back. So I'm going to start in Shavasana. And you'll see that at the top of the lesson plan, I'm starting with an opening Shavasana, and then down at the bottom of the lesson plan, I'm closing with a closing Shavasana. Then every single pose is the same in the reverse order. So after my opening Shavasana, hugging the knees into the chest, Upanasana. Before the last Shavasana, the last pose before it, hugging the knees into the chest. So they just flip. So in this one I go opening Shavasana, hugging the knees into the chest, simple reclining twist. Then a reclining hamstring stretch using a strap. Then at the end of class, all of that in reverse order, I have that reclining hamstring stretch with the strap, so a student could just simply notice at the beginning how the hamstring's feeling, probably pretty tight. They're going to want to keep the knees bent. And then at the end, when they return to that hamstring stretch, what has changed? Does the hamstrings feel a little bit warmer? Is there a little bit more flexibility? or you could offer a different variation of the hamstring stretch. I love it if you're using a strap, when you do it up like a loop, wear it over the back of your head, and your head holds the leg up like a hammock. Some of you might know that, some of you might not. And then another pose in that was a reclining twist. So at the beginning, both knees into the chest, both legs over to the side, simple reclining twist. When I come back to it at the end, there's an opportunity to do a different reclining twist. Maybe the one leg straight and just taking one knee over, which we know requires more rotation in the upper back, thoracic spine, so it's going to be more accessible towards the end of the class. So the warm up and the cool down are exactly the same. Then coming up into the flow, again, it's just a reverse. So this class comes up to child's pose, cat-cow, walking the dog, rising to standing, taking a sun salutation. And then the first sequence is a low lunge, rocking back to Ardha Hanumanasana, runner's lunge. And in this first variation, when we're walking into the destination, I would flow in and out of the pose, coming forwards to low lunge, rocking back to Ardha Hanumanasana, coming forwards, rocking back with the breath. And then when you come to repeat that on the way home, you could hold the low lunge. You could maybe offer the opportunity for people to lower down onto their elbows. When you come back into the runner's lunge, Ardha Hanumanasana, you would pause in it, or option for a student to slide their front leg a little further forwards, building more towards Hanumanasana, splits pose. So you plan top and bottom as you go, and then you kind of come and meet in the middle at the peak point of your destination before you turn around. And for me, that's normally a balance. So in this class that you've got the lesson plan for, the kind of turnaround point that should be exactly halfway into the class time. So an hour's class, you'll reach your destination 30 minutes in. For me, this is tree. So I did tree pose and then eagle on both legs. And then as we start the journey home, do tree pose and eagle on both legs. And again, you have the opportunity to give differing variations. So the first time we did tree, keep the foot low, kind of like a baby tree, or I like to call it a little tree sapling. And then you can do the eagle with just the legs and not the hands. Then as you turn around at the destination, starting to make your way back to Shavasana, you repeat those poses. You could give the option to bring the tree leg higher up or extend the arms up and out. Or with eagle, you could give the option of adding in eagle arms. And then you repeat every single pose again in reverse order, either layering in alternatives or taking out less instructions so people can come into the meditation of the pose, or cueing something different. So that is bilaterally symmetrical. And then Lawrence just said, love a bilaterally symmetrical sequence. Haven't done one for a while. Inspiration bubbling. Love that. Roxana, welcome. Leanne, glad you're excited, honey. Leanne's my teacher training. We'll cover this and more. So then the last sequence to look at, and I just taught this morning, is a wave sequence. I taught this morning, 30-minute class. I've recorded it. And I've put it in the email to you that you'll automatically get if you download the guide. So you'll get the class I taught this morning. It was a bit hard. I was feeling a bit funky Friday. So wave sequencing is good when you want to teach a pose that is a little bit more on the challenging side, and you want to really teach the key alignment points of it slowly, bit by bit. Because take, for instance, this morning's was Bakasana Crow. If you're going to take a mixed level class, which includes beginners who've never heard any instruction on Crow, but equally you could think of this as Warrior 3, again, Ardha Chandrasana, or do you know that standing balance with the hand to big toe, Hasta Padangusthasana, when you stand up and extend your front leg and hold your toe? It'd be really good for that, but equally something like Trikonasana as well could work quite well. But something where you want to really teach it. So if you imagine someone has never done Crow and we're in a mixed level class and it's challenging for everybody, And you want to teach every component, taking your feet mat distance wide, heels in, toes out, planting the hands on the floor, hands a foot in front of you, pushing the ground away, puffing up through your shoulders, engaging your core, lifting your hips up, coming onto tiptoes, leaning forwards, knees to the back of the arm, lifting one leg, two legs. That's too much instruction. So wave sequencing gives you the opportunity to break that instruction down, splattered throughout the class. It's almost like piecing together a jigsaw puzzle. So what you do in wave sequencing is you take your focal pose, mine was crow this morning, and you think, what is the the simplest variation of that, or the most closely relating shape, the very seed of it, the very essence of it. So for crow, if you think about it, what's the first thing you got to do? It's Malasana, yogi squat, taking the feet mat distance wide, heels in, toes out, squat down, plant the hands on the floor. That is that first Lego brick. Let's go that. It's a better analogy. Lego bricks. That is the first brick you need to build a Lego model of crow. So you do your normal warm-up. So the warm-up, just like I explained with the ladder, the warm-up is getting the movements, warming up the parts of the body that are needed for your focal pose. So for today, we were warming up the core, and we were sort of teaching a little bit of crow, lying down on the back, just warming up for that. Then after you've done your warm-up, you're coming to your peak flow, probably 20 minutes of your class, and this is where you start the wave. So I'm up to standing, let's go. The first pose I put in is the first Lego block. So we inhale, reach the arms up, exhale, drop down into Malasana. Again, I've done my warm-up. I still want to keep this quite simple. So easy Malasana, heels up, heels down, doesn't matter, just teaching that. I want to explain, this is the first seed of the shape, or this is the first Lego block. Then take a flow that relates. So I simply did Malasana, back to dog, a vinyasa, and warrior one. Repeat on the other side. Then I come back to the top of the mat and add on the second Lego block. So at this point, it was come back into Malasana, hands on the ground. I really taught the hand placement, pushing into the ground, lifting your bum up high, legs straight. Just teaching that. So it's the second Lego block. Then added in a flow. I think I did low lunge and a high lunge. Then come back to the top of the mat, come back in my wave. So my wave is coming back again. To adding a next Lego block. We go down to Malasana, plant the hand, lift the hips, and then it was about bending the elbows, rocking forwards, putting the knees on the back of the arms, rocking out the pose. Coming forwards, knees on the back of the arms, rocking out the pose. Coming forwards, knees on the back of the arms, rocking out the pose, and then take your next sequence. I think I did a side plank Vashisthasana and then a flowy thing. Again, you can take the class, just download the guide. And then top of the mat, now add the next Lego block. So that's Malasana. And that means you're giving the choice for people in the class to stay in Malasana. Plant the hands, lift the hips up. If you want, add the third Lego block. Bend the elbows, shift forwards, knees on the back of the arms. If you want, add the fourth Lego block, lift one foot. Put it down, lift the other foot, then take another sequence. I didn't this morning, so it was just a half-hour class, so I didn't take another sequence at that point, but in a 60-minute class, I'd have put in another sequence, maybe a warrior flow. Repeat it both sides, come to the top of the mat. Now we've arrived, we're ready to put that last Lego block on. Malasana, lovely accessible teaching. Anyone can choose to stay at Malasana, or lift the hips, or bend the knees, elbows to the back of the arms, or lift one foot, or lift 2 feet. And then everyone's practicing together at whatever number of Lego blocks is feeling good for them today. Then you're finished, come down to your closing sequence and relaxing seating poses, reclining poses, and Shavasana. So I hope you can see how these 3 styles are really suitable for mixed level, because they really give you the opportunity to A, teach the poses, because each one of these has repetition. So the first time you get the chance to really teach the basic technique. Then as they come back again, you can layer on more educational instruction. Then it gives the opportunity for students to learn through the power of repetition. Otherwise, if you think about it, you might teach crow this week and it might not circle back around in your lesson planning. I don't know, I think I teach crow once a year, but it might not circle back around for 6 months. Whereas if you keep repeating it in the class through the power of repetition, students becoming more familiar with that pose. And then again, because in all these sequencing styles there's repetition, it's giving the chance to offer other variations for students who are feeling up for it today, they've been practicing longer, wish to explore alternative variations, they can do so. And then just because they're very structured, a ladder is a structured way of sequencing, bilateral is a structured way of sequencing, so is wave. It's going to tickle your brain cells, get you out of that rut, get you thinking a little bit differently. You'll still be teaching the same poses you so often do, but just differently. And I think this is sometimes a problem in vinyasa with creative sequencing, is people think it's about clever transitions and making up new poses and these super long flows that feel all fluid and dancey to you, but then when you get them into the class they're a little bit too confusing or complex for your students, especially mixed level. So creativity doesn't have to be about pulling something totally original out of the bag. It is about how you approach things, how you reorder things, and bring your students along in the journey. Again, if you do the ladder class that comes with the downloadable guide that I taught this week, you'll see how I absolutely bring the students along. I didn't use the analogy of a ladder for them. I used the analogy that we were climbing Everest. And every bit we're going to take a couple more steps up Everest till we get to the top of Everest. There was Ardha Chandrasana. Okay, my lovelies, so make sure you go download the guide. Just to give you that again, it's my website, www.lauragreenyoga.co.uk/blog/sequencing. That will give you a downloadable guide that has the 2 lesson plans, and then there'll be an automated follow-up email that has 3 class videos that you can do. This is all free, of course, so you can experience these in action. And that's so important. You've got to feel something to understand it. I often say it's like trying to understand how delicious a chocolate cake is by reading the recipe. You can't, you've got to eat the cake. So go get the videos, enjoy the classes. I would say they are vinyasa. The focal poses have been Ardha Chandrasana and crow. I teach a lot of gentle yoga as well, but I just wasn't doing that this week. So I want to share with you this vinyasa approach. I'm just going to have a look if there's any questions. I think you're all good. Any questions, pop them in the comments. If you're listening to the podcast, just DM me on social media. You'll find me at Laura Green Yoga. I'm happy to answer them. Go download your guide and have a lovely week. I will see you next week, my loves. Bye for now.